By show of hands, how many people in here have watched a movie that won the Oscar for the Best Picture? Alright, now, how many of you know the exact reasons on why it won the Best Picture award? My goal is that by the end of this presentation, you will know all the reasons why it won the Best Picture. A few nights ago, I was watching this movie, The Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. I had already known that it won Best Picture, and I looked it up online and realized it won a total of 11 Oscars. I was wondering to myself, why does everyone like this movie so much? I had a few ideas, such as the massive fantasy battles or the really interesting bad guy, but I wanted to find out the specific aspects that make this movie good and every other good movie good. There are 7 main qualities of a movie that people consider when reviewing a film. My goal by the end of this presentation is for you all to be more interested in the art of movies and to know the specific attributes that make them good. I challenge you all to think about movies more and recognize if the features that I'm about to list are good or bad. The first aspect is the directing. The director is like the captain of a movie. He's supposed to make sure that everything runs smoothly and that the film's tone is what was envisioned when they were figuring out the film. Star Wars is a great example of this, mostly because it combined multiple genres of film into one film. The cantina scene is like a Western saloon movie, while the escape from the Death Star is an adventure with unique twists and turns. The next aspect is the writing. This is the story and dialogue of the film. Pulp Fiction is a great example of this because their dialogue is very casual and it's very quotable, but it also reveals important plot points. If a scene is supposed to feel serious, but it has a comedic tone, then that is on the writers. The next aspect is the cinematography. This is what you see on the screen. The cinematographer is supposed to immerse you into the film. They're supposed to allow you to become engrossed in all aspects of the visual elements. The Lord of the Rings is a great example of this because of all the breathtaking shots of New Zealand and all the intricately detailed cities and towns. The next aspect is the editing. The editor is in charge of most of the post-production. He can add things to the movie, such as add special effects or CGI, but he can also enhance the movie experience, like fixing continuity problems, or even he can mask a bad acting performance with CGI. He is also in charge of adding cuts, which is a lot harder than it sounds. A great example of this is The Matrix. In this picture, you are in the real world, while in this picture, you are in the Matrix. The editing is so well because you can clearly tell that these two are taking places in different worlds, but while you're watching the movie, it's a very subtle change. The next important aspect is the acting. The actors must convince an audience that they are a certain character. They can use certain techniques, such as walking differently, they can talk with an accent, or they can use specific body movements to prove that they are that character. A good actor can also turn bad writing into convincing dialogue. Try to convince anyone as Harry Potter except Daniel Radcliffe. It is hard because he did such a good job as immersing you into the world of Harry Potter. The next aspect is the production design. This is all of the movie's sets, and the production designer's job is to create a convincing environment. It's to create convincing atmosphere and environment. The set of a fantasy film will differ greatly from the sets of a 1940s crime movie. A great example of this is The Great Gatsby. It perfectly envisions every part of 1920s New York, and we are thoroughly convinced that we are part of the movie. The last and probably most overlooked aspect is the sound editing. The sound editors are supposed to produce engaging sounds and music. They're supposed to be so engaging to a point where you don't even notice that they are there. A great example of this is the Titanic. During this scene, the ship is breaking in half. The sound editors mix music and sound perfectly to enhance the movie experience further. These are the 7 main aspects, but there is an 8th aspect. The 8th aspect is your personal opinion. Your idea of a good movie may be different than a critic's idea. If the movie did well in all of the 7 aspects, but you thought it was maybe a little boring, you are entitled to that opinion. I'm not asking you to change your outlook on movies. I'm just asking you to watch movies a bit closer because your opinion matters. For example, by show of hands, how many of you have seen the movie Forrest Gump? mostly everyone. Also, like most of the critics really enjoyed this film. In 1995, however, at the Oscars, The Shawshank Redemption and Pulp Fiction were also nominated for Best Film. All three of these movies were very good, so the critics had a tough time deciding which one would win the Best Picture award. So it obviously took public opinion into account. Forrest Gump made back 6 times its budget, but The Shawshank Redemption barely profited from its run, and Pulp Fiction didn't do nearly as well as Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump ended up taking home the Best Picture because of the public opinion on the movie. This situation proves that the Academy takes public opinion into account. We each have a small say in the Academy Awards. My point is that each of these movies may have the 7 aspects, like the 3 movies I just listed, but Forrest Gump had that specific charm that audiences love. One person might love an action-packed sci-fi adventure, but another person might love a slow, well-written crime film. I'm not telling you to watch every movie with intense attention and analyze every detail. I just want you to watch movies a bit closer, and I want you to pay a little more attention to the small things, like the acting and all the reasons I just listed. Use the 7 characteristics I just listed as guidelines when you're watching a film. Like the movies I said before, The Shawshank Redemption, Pulp Fiction, and Forrest Gump, each of those movies exceeded really well in the 7 aspects, but Forrest Gump was the favorite of the year because it made back 6 times its budget. I want you to keep enjoying movies, and I feel that if you try to analyze and pay attention to every detail, I think you'll enjoy movies even more than you do now. I think that it is super important that people pay attention to movies, and I feel like it will be beneficial to everyone if they just pay more attention to the details in movies. Thank you.